and it seems like they're missing the forest for the trees. Like they're focusing so much on good acts, focus so much on believing the right things, focus so much on looking the part that you miss the rest of the concept. And so we're now just kind of stumbling around when that one thing we've been focusing on kind of gets lost, or it doesn't kind of end up like, for example, if you've always associated holiness with like someone high up in the church and that person falls out of grace, now you kind of lose your way. I'm like, oh, I don't know. Now I don't know what to believe, and now we're all just kind of stumbling around in the dark because our one pillar that we held on to is now all gone. So that's the main issue with having such a narrow, not really narrow, but such a concentrated idea of what this concept is instead of seeing it for what it really is.
Yeah.
Well, I think the thing you have to look at is in the Bible, when it says that it talks about holiness, it's talking about being set apart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that's the key issue, is that people don't understand that one part. Like, what does it mean to be set apart? And they have a basic understanding that it means to be good and set apart from the world and stuff like that. But then they start ignoring like the commandments.
Yeah.
For some reason. And that's
at that point, at that point, culture kind of starts to eke its way in, and then you start looking at the cultural norms and like, I don't really want to give up pork. I don't really want to give up not going out on Friday night. I don't really want to do this weird Jewish thing. I don't really want to do this. And that's where the main issues come.
Yeah, because I mean, like the commandments kind of give you that outline of how to be set apart from the world, you know. And if you follow those guidelines, and that's what God wants, you know, you'll be in His favor, and so
you'll be fine.
You know what's crazy to me that I sometimes think about, like some of these guys, you know, kind of confuse nowadays like holiness or anointing with like fame. Some of these guys are like artists. Some of these pastors, they're like artists. Like it's a show. Like it's go time. It's a show, and you know, people like really like them. They're very popular. And it's like, oh my God, it's such a holy man. But it is, to me, I see like, wow, he's like a music artist. He's like some of those guys carry out themselves around like they're just artists. They're ready to do a show and they're gonna do it great. They're gonna scream and gonna get you motivated. Like I was like Tony Robbins. You know, it's look like you just feel like it's not a message that you're listening to. It's like a Tony Robbins motivational thing. Like,
yeah.
That's crazy to me because it is like they're artists, man.
Yeah, it's just it's like to them it's just theater. It's just something to entertain you for an hour, make you feel good about yourself, and then you go about your week and you think, you know, oh hey, I went to church and it felt great. The pastor really inspired me.
Because the people don't know better, that they have like they put these people kind of like on a pedestal. Like my dad was telling me this story about this one time. This guy was visiting this church in New Jersey. He had this luggage, and this guy was going to help him with the luggage. And he tells the guy, "No, you can't touch my luggage. You can't touch it because you have sinned, and you can't touch my luggage."
Wow.
So, yeah, basically, like his luggage was like holy or something, and the guy couldn't.
Well, he has.
How did he know that he sinned though? How does he know?
Of the Covenant.
Yes,
did he watch him tell a lie an hour before, and now he just knows? I don't understand.
But you see, that's because the guy, he didn't have the basic understanding. Like
another concept, I think that especially now today, I feel like is a big thing that is represented in religion. When you see a holy person, I feel like is somebody that is going to basically pat you in the back, even if you are doing something wrong. I feel like you see all these great leaders or pastors that support certain movements that don't move according to Torah or according to the Bible itself, the gospel. And so, you know, they condone certain things that are okay, are being promoted in the world, like let's say abortion for one. They step back on like topics like that, and they just say, you know, we're not nobody to judge. We're nobody to cast judgment on people and make them feel bad. And then once they do that, these people, this wide range of people that are basically supporting this, they feel like, oh, you know, this pastor is somebody that I can respect because he's not going to judge me. He's not going to judge if I want to be the way I want to be or think the way that I want to think, because he doesn't cast judgment. And so I think that's a tool that many leaders use today, is this idea that, I'm not going to judge you. You are who you are, and you think the way you think, and it's going to be okay because God loves you. And that's a message that I feel today, especially with many things that are coming out in our society, that people want to basically be free to do whatever and however they want. And so these spiritual leaders, people see them, oh, you're a pastor, and then once they hear motivational words that can resonate with you and make you feel good about what you want to do personally, whether it be against God or not, I feel like that's how they portray holiness in a way too.
Well, I think the problem is because like the one thing I learned, which was from Rico, senior, was about how holiness is not about like an individual. It's about like us as a people, we're holy, but not individually. Like if you go in the Bible, he talks about how nobody, like the forefathers, nobody is called holy. They're called righteous and just and things like that, but nobody's called, this person is a holy man. It's always, directed towards the people in general. Like when that verse where he says, "Be holy, for I am holy," he's talking to Israel as a nation.
Yeah, he's not talking about individuals.
Yeah, when they're together, they're holy. It's not about individual, and I think that's the problem in the modern view. It's about me. Everything's about me, like how I can be a holy person and how I can be good. But holiness is about, when it comes to people, we got to come together and under one roof and one understanding, and worship the Father and also be a light unto the nation and things like that. And then that's when we are holy, when we come. But until then you're just an individual.
Right. Yeah, it's more like a community thing.
The Jewish has another point of view, like of holiness. Means like, was it like being perfect? Like what's their point of view
on who?
On that
Jewish point of view?
Jewish.
The Jewish
people.
Mm-hmm. Their point of view on being holy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would say that the Jewish view is much closer to what we're going to discuss as the biblical view.
Okay.
It's the idea of being set apart, and that, and exactly how are you set apart? What are you doing? How are you contributing to a certain lifestyle that would fall within what we would call set apart? Whenever something is holy, how do you set it apart? In Judaism, it's very much focused, Leviticus centric, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think that holiness in Judaism has gone too far off course from what we're going to talk about.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
I feel like when we study these 2 points, which is something that I really am trying to understand, and is the balance, right? Because it goes back to the same thing. You have the mechanics of things and how you do things and why you do things and all these reasons, but then there's the structure and how, why do you do Shabbat? What's the reason for Shabbat, right? And then how do you represent it, right? People say, oh, I do Shabbat is I've heard say that Shabbat is the way that you do it, and it's not, because Shabbat is not yours, so it's not your day. Shabbat is not how you want to present it to God. Shabbat is how God wants you to present it, right? And so us, which is something that I feel like we all have to understand in the Hebrews movement and in Christianity coming into the Hebrews movement, is that there is certain things that we don't have, meaning that Judaism has, right? And so yes, in Christianity there's extreme where it's like you don't have to do anything and you're holy, and then Judaism is you have to do all these things perfectly to be holy, right? And so we're here to find out where do we meet in the middle, right? And I feel like for us, we have to reach to Judaism in a way that we can understand the structural side of things, because if we're going to compare when it comes to legally who is authorized to establish things and how things are supposed to do, is them, right? Because us, if we're Christians or Christian believers in Torah, and we say, "Oh, we're not gonna do what they do. We're gonna do it our way." You're doing exactly the same thing they're doing, but like I said last week, you just have no authority to do that. So I think we have to learn, like I said, the structure and then find the balance in between both of them, so that way we can, be a light.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's about like recognizing what they've done before and finding
Exactly.
that common ground that doesn't go the extremes another way. I do agree, and I agree with what you said earlier um, about the issue with inclusivity. And there's no issue inherently with inclusivity. It's always good to be inclusive of people,
Yeah,
but when you, and I think we touched on this last week actually, when you lose the fear of God as the king, and
exactly.
you see him only as just, oh, God loves me and he just loves me so much and he loves me so much and he's just my best friend and he loves me. When you see him that way, instead of seeing him as the great king, the creator of the universe,
Mm-hmm.
the master and commander of all things, when you lose that, then you start to get more, your focus becomes more internal and more personal, and now at that point you feel that you can start to backslide on those certain things and include things that aren't morally correct or
Yeah,
aren't with Torah.
yeah. But
So I
to opinion to it, I think it's has to. You have to learn to die to your opinion so you can restructure it with the boundaries of Elohim. Right? When you start, I feel like when you start building your opinions and your personal views of your future in Torah, you have to consider how is going to look in the realm of Elohim.
yeah,
Like, is it going to conflict with Shabbat? Is it going to conflict with the feast? Is this going to conflict with my family and how I can basically give a representation? Because at the end of the day, something that I didn't understand, which I understand now, is like before I didn't think. I was an advocate of I can care less what anybody thinks about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it.
Mhm.
But then eventually I understood that it wasn't so much about the people seeing me, but the people seeing God. Because people when you say you believe in God, and when you say you believe in the Bible, when you say you believe in Torah, and you are so advocate about commandments and all this, people are going to see and wait for you to fail. And so once you start looking a certain way that basically you could say religion has tarnished, whether it be saying you do something but you saying you believe in something but you don't apply it. Once you start doing these things, is you start tarnishing his word, his name, which is something very important. Because if you tarnish God's name, God doesn't care about your opinion on how life is. Like, he wants you to understand that you have to live according to what he wants you to live by and the boundaries he wants you to live by. You can create in his boundaries as much as you want. You can be as creative as you want, but you got to make sure you stay in his boundaries. Because if you get out of his boundaries, you're on your own, and you're basically dishonoring him.
right.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I mean, I think that we're gonna talk about next week, but cover a little bit today is about how, because when you see how the Bible uses holiness, it's not really like about, because I feel like the modern view is like a state of being. Like when you're
Yeah.
holy, it's a state of being. Like
It's
right
more
now,
spiritual.
yeah. If I'm doing good right now I'm in a holiness state of being. But when
Yeah.
you look at the Bible, it's more like a status in a way. Like the high priest, he is set apart for his duties,
Mhm.
and only he can do what he does, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean anybody else is lesser in God's
No,
eyes.
Yeah.
It just means that they cannot encroach and try to do what the high priest does.
everybody has a
Exactly.
function.
Yeah.
Everybody has a function.
Like kind of, for example, there's really back in those days, there was really two kinds of holiness, two kinds of purity. You had the moral purity and then you had the ritual purity.
Yeah.
Right. And they're two distinct things that have their own place,
Yeah.
but they both mean that you are set apart. That you are in this purpose and you are in this state for this reason. That you are holy for this reason.
Yep.
But one is very different from the other. And a lot of that, again, we're really teasing it. I know we're teasing it hard, but next week is more really going to cover and go more in depth on a lot of these things, because a lot of this does kind of loop back into the New Testament and some of the things that Yeshua was dealing with in the first century. So a lot of the stuff really does apply. And on a bit of a side note, I really feel like people in the modern age, in a Greco-Roman mindset, going from this back to the ancient Near Eastern practice, I really feel like the way that you define things like holiness, the way you define things like Shabbat, I feel like the definition you give at that time kind of shows your own personal spiritual growth.
Yes.
Like where are you in your spiritual walk? I can determine that based on the answer you give for how you feel about Shabbat.
Or where are you trying to go in your spiritual walk?
Exactly. So if you ask me how I feel about Shabbat, and I say, oh, it's just a day I can just kind of just kick back and just stay home, just play video games, I guess, or just do whatever I want because God rested, so should I.
Yeah.
You're either going in a weird direction or you've just started.
Yeah.
So there's many. Yeah. So you kind of know from that point, like, okay, I can kind of gauge where you are.
Yeah, and I think there's people that it's funny, like let's say they're in a like tough spot where like you were doing good in the world or whatever or in religion, and then you crash, you know what I mean, and you find yourself in this hole, and then you find the Torah and you find the way, if you want to say, and then once you start walking in it, you start taking like these turns basically based on your okay, now I have the Torah because I know I have to keep the commandments, the Shabbat. So now from here on I got it, right? And so you start taking control of the ship when it's not even your turn yet to start guiding it. I feel like there's a time where God tells you you're in control, and there's a time where He tells you I'm in control. And I feel like that's where we have to find, like I said again, the balance where we have to let go and learn to let go of the part that He has to fulfill.
It's kind of
controlling it. We're never gonna reach that level of holiness or separation.
This is kind of funny because the things that God separates in the Bible, which would be like the Sabbath, the land, the people, Israel, the priesthood, those are all things that people say are done away with or no longer valid. But yet when you read like in the Bible, those are all things that He set forever. Like this is set apart forever. The people of Israel, I set them apart forever. The priesthood forever. The land forever. But yet those are always the things that people have a problem with, like those main things, which I think is kind of weird, Yeah. But that's the thing that God Himself established, but we have a problem with understanding. Like I think that's the big issue, is that people don't understand that you have to follow God, and like you said, Alex, and like the Bible says, you have to die to yourself. All those opinions that you have and views and things that you want. What was it?
You have to be born again.
Yeah, you have to be born again.
Born again.
It's like all those like opinions and thoughts that you had and the wants, and you gotta put what God wants first. And when you do that, things start running a bit smoother. And you have this better understanding of how the Bible works and stuff like that, because
you have a direction.
Yeah, but you have a direction. Yeah, exactly. Like, because I feel like before, I didn't really have a taste of what we had before, because I kind of started when I was around 4 years old when we did this walk. But when we used to go to churches, because at the time there was no Hebrew roots churches, I feel like these people didn't really have a direction.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that like in a bad way, but it's like, we're here now. We want to worship God. We want to worship Jesus, Yeshua. And then what? Now what?
Yeah, it's like so if you go to a church right now, like, and I ask, like, where are we going? Like, what is the purpose? What is the purpose of me coming to church?
And that was always the thing. Like they were at that step, and all they needed to do was take that extra step, and they would be, where we're at right now. But the only problem is, like I said before, they have that contradictory feelings toward what God has established forever, And it's not their fault. It's just because that's what they were born and raised with. Yeah, and that's how they were taught. But you have to. It comes to that moment where you realize that this is what God established Himself. He made it wholly set apart, and He also established it forever. So I can't say anything.
There's really no arguing with it. It's either you accept it or you don't. That's really it.
Yeah, like right now,
pretty black and white.
If the president makes an executive order me myself as a citizen, maybe I don't like it, but I can't do anything about it.
That's true.
It is what it is.
Despite what everyone on the left is going to say, you can't do anything about
Yeah,
it.
you can go to Twitter and like complain all day.
But do you?
Twitter about it, though.
I'll ask you a question because it's something that I think about too. I know people really want to approach God and want to connect with God, but do you really think that people see God the way as the creator of heaven and earth when they approach you could say the Bible and their dedication to going to church or whatever? Do you really think they see God like that, or they have this picture of the God that they have been painted, which is like, be like we've talked, be good, but I feel I don't think people understand the magnitude of God. Like I don't think people see God as the creator of heaven and earth. Like when somebody tells me, oh, like I always use the same example. Like when somebody tells me, if you don't come for Shabbat, you're gonna get fired. It's like, bro, like I follow the God that created heaven and earth. Like it's like do you get, like, do you understand that, like,
if I get fired, he finds me another job.
Yeah, like I don't care. Like that problem is so petty compared to what I'm serving.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I don't
exactly,
think people have. I don't think they haven't gotten to that level to understand. Like,
Well, I think it's like
I don't know.
I think it's like a very broad stroke because it really depends on the person. Because I've seen people that they see all the answers like in front of them, but they don't care, and it's like a personal thing. They don't want to let go of things that they do. And then there's other people that they've been taught certain things, and they don't want to change because that would be going back on like certain traditions that they do, or going back on what their parents taught them, and they don't want to do that because anything outside what they've been taught is heresy. That's what they've been taught.
And it's also uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable.
Exactly,
True, that's true.
Like the first Sabbath is always going to be
fun.
uncomfortable for everybody because you don't know what you're doing, and
Mhm.
you don't get anything. Like why are they praying for this piece of bread? Like that's probably what they're thinking about. Why do I got to pray for this glass of wine? Why are you even drinking wine? Is probably what they're thinking.
But in the Hebrew roots movement, you've told me that they have this feeling about, let's say, like the temple.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's like my personal view. A lot of now, mainly, right? I can have an opinion on religion, right? That's mainly what sometimes we discuss. But I personally believe that there's a lot of problems in the movement that are important because we are basically the vehicle that is supposed to help those that are like not sure about this, bring clarity to them. But when we are all when we're all in this like different pages in things that really, like Rico says, don't edify the kingdom. It's like you're wasting time going in circles about topics that make no sense or don't help.
It all goes down to misunderstandings. Like I said, people have a misunderstanding about holiness. They don't understand that if God set apart the temple, it's forever. I mean, if you read it, it's going to be reestablished later on when Yeshua comes back and reigns on earth. It's going to be reestablished. But it just goes down to
it definitely makes you misunderstandings and ego.
Like I've talked about with Rico too. Like a lot of people don't really study ideas like ancient Near Eastern perspectives, or Russell. He studies a lot about the temple and the priestly duties. People don't really look into that.
Mm-hmm.
People just read the front of the Bible as it is, and the problem is that the Bible is written to a certain group of people, and they had a clear idea of like the culture of that time. Everybody had a clear understanding. He used language that everybody understood at that time. So if you read it, you're not going to get it unless you study the culture of that time.
Yeah, it's like
you go ahead.
No, it's like when I went to the temple course. I remember I told Asash when Gabriel explained that, in the book of Revelation, when John is like he's saying that behind him the sky opened, and that's where the 24 leaders were, and nobody was found worthy. That's when that moment where he's in the heavens open, I'm like everybody else, I'm like thinking that, like the sky open and all that. But then when he explains that the temple had this veil and they used to call it the heavens, and then he says that the heavens open, meaning that the veil in the temple opens. It's like, what? Like so many people think they're looking at the sky for this revelation, and it's a structure that is in the Bible that is pointing to you where God is, which is in Jerusalem, in the temple. And I don't know. I feel like people have been deprived of so much information and so much guidance, just feeding emotions and personal satisfaction.
Yeah, like the issue we're having, the reason why we're having a lot of the issues now on this side of the world is the same reason why when you read the Gemara, they have such weird opinions, such weird descriptions of things, and that's because we're not there. We don't see these things. We're not living in the land, because you can read about the valley of the shadow of death all you want, but until you physically go there and see it and see how desolate it is and how empty, you're not going to have the same kind of mental image and respect for it. So you're there.
When I used to read that, I used to think about like friggin' fire and demons everywhere. Valley of the shadow of death.
I've been there. It's just more desolate and boring. There's just nothing there. It's nothing. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, I think demons are actually making more entertaining than what's actually there. So let's go that way.
So yeah.
Before I studied like anything like that, like about like ancient Near Eastern things or honor and shame, like it changed the way I saw the Bible, because for me, the way God did it was pretty smart, because he talked to the culture of that time, knowing that we could look back into history and study it. Because if he talked the way we talk now, nobody would understand at that time, But he did it smart so that he could talk to the audience at that time and to us as well, because we have the tools and access to look and study history and stuff like that, and we could figure out, what exactly what he was trying to say,
Yeah.
So I think it was pretty smart.
Also, like the Canaanites.
Yeah, but it just requires work on our part to really decipher it. I'm sorry, Alex,
Yeah.
what did you say?
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah. You have to take your time and read all these books and stuff. But yeah, I feel like like something else that I like read was like the Canaanites. I used to think about them like really like these like savages that are just burning babies,
evil barbarians.
Yeah, and then when I read, like they had they were pretty sophisticated, and they had ships, and they used to do all these things, and it's like, where is this information? Like
That's the problem. It's like it's the Western mindset, and a lot of this stuff was found out and written. Like a lot of what we know now about the ancient Near East was discovered like in the late 1800s by Germans. Like Germans, ironically enough. Like a lot of these guys were Europeans that were just there exploring, and they cataloged and wrote their findings, and then it just got lost to time because it's been close to 200 years now. So, I mean, that's just what happens. It's sad, but it's true. And I'm sure as time goes on, we'll all discover more books that are written around that time, or more texts that just didn't come out, and then we'll have more kind of clarity.
But going back to what we're talking about, I feel like that's the big thing also, like in the modern church, is people are trying their best to be holy. Like that's the one thing that they want to be, even though they have a lot of things wrong. That's kind of like their desire to be that golden person, but they don't have an idea exactly, what does that mean? Like, how do I be a good person according to the Bible?
It's like buying something from IKEA, right? I want to make this table, but I'm not going to read the directions.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, why can't I make this table? Keep making chairs. I don't know why I can't make this table.
It's like the atheists that say that, it's only good enough to be a good person. I don't need no God, and he might be a good person, but that's him. About the other 1,000.
Exactly.
How do you control the other 1,000 to be as good as you are? There's no structure. It's only your opinion. So everybody's gonna have a different one. For somebody, being good is throw the trash outside the window, or you is throw it in the trash.
Yeah.
But there's no control over 1,000 people if everybody is going by what their thing is being good at. So you have the intention, and you might be a good person, but you have no structure to back off your intention.
Yeah.
It's like I think it's the book of Joshua at the end when everything was going crazy, and it says that everybody did what was right in their own eyes.
Yes.
And that's the problem today, that people, they say, oh, I'm a good person, but everybody has their own definition, like you said, of what's a good person. Because maybe what's good for me, for you, is like bad or boring or whatever. And everybody, they kind of tweak things so that they're good, so they could be good people. And they always move the goalpost a little bit, so that way they have more free space. What's a good person?
I think this is a problem.
Wait, sorry. Go ahead, Russell. Sorry.
I think this is a problem that it exists in Christianity today. What you said, everyone is doing what is right in their own eyes. Everyone has different standards. Your standard is different than my standard, and if you don't measure up to my standard, then you're in sin. You're a failure. You're not enough. But I would say that this mentality of each man doing what's right in his own eyes, it doesn't just exist within Christianity, but it has carried over into the Hebrew roots movement as well. Very much so.
Sad, but it's true,
yeah. When we talk about holiness, I hear a lot of people in the Hebrew roots movement, they just say it's just set apart, without any further explanation.
Yeah.
And I would say that in and of itself is a misunderstanding of holiness. Because, I can take two books and set one apart from the other, but that doesn't make the other book holy, So that being said, what does it really boil down to? Is it exclusivity? I would say I don't think it's exclusivity either. I think a lot of people treat it like exclusivity nowadays in the Hebrew movement. We are different than the church. We're better than the church. And
that's because what we understand. That's a concept that we get here in the West is exclusivity, being a VIP, being a very important person, being set apart that way. That's what we understand in the modern age. So that's what we think holy is, anyway.
What have y'all, if I might ask, how have you viewed holiness as it's been received by the Hebrew roots movement in different circles? Perhaps I'm sure everyone's been around to different places, because I know. In places that I've been, holiness it's just set apart, the set apart place, the set apart day, the set apart people. What do you mean by that? It seems rather shallow in my opinion. Or when you just leave it at that, it's a shallow way of leaving it.
Well, I've seen what you've talked about, where people say we're different from the Christian church and we're better. But then it gets to the point where their certain group of people are better than everybody else in Hebrew roots because they're following the correct calendar, or they're following, they're reading all these different books. And I feel like like Rico said, it becomes to the point where, you're trying to be this very important person, this VIP in the group, but that's not what holiness is about. It's not just being, the head honcho out of everybody,
Yeah.
And when you look at the Bible, the high priest, yes, he is holy. He would be considered holier than the rest of the priests, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't mean that the rest of the priests are just garbage.
Exactly. Yeah.
The high priest is not gonna be like, oh, what's up, guys?
Coming in on his high horse.
Coming in on yeah, he didn't treat them like that. He has his job. Everybody else has their own job. And that's kind of what the biblical definition of holiness is. Like, it's a status. It's different statuses. And you mentioned, Rico, about the different what was it? Like moral, what was it?
Moral and ritual purity.
Yeah, there'd be times where somebody, I don't know, they have an emission and they can't go to the temple.
Yeah.
That wouldn't mean that they're unholy and that they're sinning. It just means that they're
not morally unclean. They're just ritually.
They're not just physically clean to go to the temple, which makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like if today in the modern world, if I'm really, really sweaty, I'm not gonna go to a business meeting. it wouldn't be appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everybody understands that part. But when you talk about like in the temple and stuff like that,
Mhm.
you know, it's like, whoa, like God, why is he so harsh? You know,
It's such a weird foreign concept. Yeah, exactly. So
but
it's
no, it's not. We do the same thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you guys. I don't know what you guys seen. Because I mean, these two guys, we go to the same church, Asaj and Alex. So I mean, unless you guys have something that I didn't see.
What is exactly the question?
What have you seen in the Hebrew roots, like their perspective of holiness?
Uh, um, walk the walk. Is it not only for my perspective, somebody that's not only preaches it, not only say the good things of the Lord. Somebody that's walking into it. Somebody that you cannot pick anything on him because it's really a whole. A person that's actually walking his words, walking Torah. That's really walking the walk. It's not only talking. It's not a show. It's not saying how good you should be. It's somebody that does it. You cannot say anything about him because it's clear. It's clear in what he's doing. So that's how I see it, or at least one perspective.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of that. I've seen some weird things too. I've seen people that just pray constantly, just try to commune with the Lord, and they think that's what's the key to holiness, just constantly being in that state of just prayer and asking for prayer and asking to pray for others and just wanting to be there constantly for them like that. And then I've seen people try to focus on good deeds and good acts and outreach and everything more than most people do. And then I've seen a lot of what Asaj is saying, just living Torah, walking by the way, keeping your word, doing things like that. So it varies, but yeah. Alex, I think you were saying something before I cut you off.
No, I was gonna say my perspective. Are you done with your perspective?
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay. But yeah, my
Anyway.
No, but I personally have experience in mainly my experience church-wise on a consistent basis has been Hebrew roots, but it's been our congregation. Like I haven't had the opportunity to witness that much in a personal level differences in the movement yet, but I have witnessed it in, I can say, maybe certain teachings, or the way some teachers might present their points of view, you could say. Obviously I've heard the thoughts of, like, the guys, how they have taught me and explained to me certain things that they have seen. I personally have done my best to to learn everybody's point of view. Something that I did when I started studying was I did submerge myself in Torah and all that, and then I got super passionate about it, and then everybody was telling me that I was being freaking Pinchas and trying to fear everybody, and you were a sinner.
You are.
I'm not. Well, I what I do is, look. The word says this. If the word says that you're wrong,
thus says Milgram. That's what it is.
But
Pinhas wasn't a bad guy. He did his job.
exactly. But so then I understood that there's the other extent, which there's a point of view that is not being cleared in, like you say, religion and all that. And then now I see that in Hebrew Roots movement there is this power of knowledge. Right, we know a lot, right, and we understand that many of us, or many, have been lied to. And so I feel like everybody is trying, now that everybody understands, oh, they lied to me, now everybody wants to take control of how the movement is going to go, and what is truth, and what we should be doing, what we should not be doing. And I feel like everybody is trying to be careful, and then obviously obey God in a way. But I feel like eventually your intentions overflow your teaching, and you can see who is teaching based on pure facts and who's teaching based on pure opinions, like I've said before. And I feel like yes, in the Hebrew Roots movement, the biggest problem is the fruit of knowledge. People have so much knowledge
Hmm.
that everybody wants to be a leader, and I do feel that there's people that Elohim is going to choose to lead the movement.
Yeah.
And
Everyone has roles.
yeah,
Exactly.
and they're not chosen just because they're better than anybody. I feel like Elohim chooses people because they have the intention of promoting his way,
Yeah,
right?
and the
So
skills and stuff like that too. Like
yeah,
not everybody can just do it.
exactly.
You gotta have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I don't think it's. I don't believe it's only having the skill. I feel like it's the intention. Like, what is
Oh
your
yeah, I mean,
true
you should have
intention?
the intention too. Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
if you're doing it without the good intentions, then
yeah,
Yeah, 'cause it's a skill you can
you're a
learn.
prosperity teacher. You know, like
yeah, like right now, like I don't have. I personally, I don't have the skills yet, right? I feel like I have. I personally believe that I have the drive
Yeah.
to learn the skills, but I personally, and I don't say it because we're recording, and I don't, and I'm pretty sure everybody can bear witness to me. My intentions are just pure to spread truth, like as much truth as I can spread and teach and talk as all I want. And so I feel like the leaders of the movement, like I know Rico and Walter and Gabriel, all these leaders. I feel like that the sole basis of their teaching is truth. Like you know you can take it or leave it, but they're trying to bring you the Jacob Good. Jacob Good. It's just pure truth. Like he's trying to bring
Yeah.
you his
It's
best.
facts. Yeah. It's
You know what I
facts
mean?
and
Like
text.
you can do whatever you want with these facts, but this is the truth. This is as much as I have in my human, power that I have to read books and condense them into this information so you can understand it and apply it and honor God. And so I
But
feel like the more people have the willingness to set their personal goals aside and fulfill their role and a purpose in the movement, I feel like it's gonna flow better. But right now, I think our biggest problem is knowledge. Too much knowledge.
I mean, yeah, that's why I think like the concept of like holiness, according to the Bible, as the idea that as a whole we're holy. I think it's a bigger, it's something that we need personally in Hebrews rather
It's a
than
big challenge. Yeah, it's a big challenge.
yeah, because I think the problem is in Hebrews everybody's trying to be this individual,
Yes.
trying to be like like oh I have this truth, and then the other person in the other corner I have another truth, and it gets to the point where everybody's in a corner and you have to pick like a side, and if you don't accept my truth, well then you're like Russell said, you're in sin, or I can't fellowship with you because we don't follow the same calendar and things like that. And it's kind of crazy because until we get together, until we put our differences aside and we try to worship God as one, we're never going to be holy as a group. And I think that's the big problem with Hebrews is that we don't get together. We're all dispersed everywhere, and there's like multiple church. Sometimes there's like multiple churches in one tiny area, and it's all because like where I used to live in Texas,
Yeah.
there was multiple groups.
Yeah.
Mostly because they
And-
had multiple ideas.
And I guarantee you, none of them fellowship. None of them interconnected.
Oh,
I
right,
guarantee you, none of them did that. It was the same thing in my old town. Yeah, it was the same thing in my old town here in Florida. I used to live at. There was like 3 churches on one road, and they were all different denominations. They had one Catholic, one Presbyterian, and one Baptist. And those pastors didn't even know each other at all. They all kept themselves. It was really weird.
That's crazy.
Super odd.
Yeah, I mean that's a big problem today that you see a lot of people, but they have their own different groups, and they don't want to interact with anybody outside of the group because there's this thing where people double down, and it's like, no, I have my opinion, and I'm not letting go. Like they don't want to have the idea that they could be wrong, and sometimes you could be right, but it doesn't mean you should treat people any different. Because you're right.
A lot of the issue is people have these opinions and they get this knowledge and they feel like they really know something and they're affecting people, and they put a lot of their own self-worth and a lot of their own kind of they really invest themselves personally into that bit of knowledge, into that doctrine, into that point of view. And if for any reason it gets disproven or it starts to crumble, they align themselves as who they are with that, and so they're terrified of losing that because that's as if they're just losing themselves now. And some people are really terrified of starting from scratch. Some people are really scared of that.
Because honestly, if you made a mistake and you fix it, you adjust it, nobody would really care. They'd be like, well,
And even if they did, eventually eventually it's gonna get lost in to history anyway. So what does it matter?
yeah, as long as you're doing the right thing and learning the right thing and teaching the right thing, that's all that matters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so that was pretty extensive. I like that a lot. And so next week we're going to talk about the other side of the coin from the ancient perspective. Correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
and go more into like what like the Bible says, like more specific.
Yeah. All right. Cool. That's gonna be a
Who's
lot
gonna
more
bring the
text.
PowerPoint?
The PowerPoint.
PowerPoint. Someone's
I
got to do
I have Kino, man. Is that fine?
I have
I also have Kino. That's weird.
Come on, man. What you also?
Nah, I
Wait,
got
we
PowerPoint.
gotta-
Man. I'm gonna use like
PowerPoint. He's a fancy like that.
I'm gonna have a transition where like it like scatters away and then like it turns into like a paper. What is it? What do you call that thing? Paper crane. You ever
Origami
seen
crane?
that transition? Yeah, it's gonna turn into an origami crane and then.
You should do the one where you should do the Thanos special and have it just dissolve and blow away, and then it goes to the next scene.
There you go. And then to be continued at the end.
Guys, I don't feel so good, and just that's it. Until next week.
I was gonna say something, but I'll say it afterwards. But yeah, I guess we'll cut it here, and then I'll see everybody next week if you're there.
God willing, next week, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good week.
Peace out.
Bye, everybody.